I was always afraid as a kid of the nuns, you know, the big penguins who were going to like smack you in the head with a ruler, which is what they always did anyway. Or the fact that, you know, if you do something wrong, you're going to go to hell, and, you know, you're going to suffer terribly. And, whoa, I mean, give me a break here. What's going on?
Ronnie James Dio stands as an immortal icon of heavy metal, a voice like roaring thunder tearing through the darkness, carrying tales of warriors, lost souls, and undying dreams. The devil horns he flashed weren't mere stage theatrics. They were declarations, symbols that reshaped the culture of rock forever. Dio was more than just a singer. He was a storyteller, the architect of epic legends etched into the fabric of metal history. He revived Black Sabbath after the Ozzy Osbourne era, forged mystical anthems with Rainbow, and ultimately built a kingdom under his own name, Dio. Yet, even the brightest flames cast shadows. As powerful as his voice remained, Dio faced his final and most formidable enemy, stomach cancer. It was a battle no human could win, but his spirit never surrendered. Even in death, Dio lives on, in his music, his symbols, and the hearts of millions of fans. What made Dio unique? What elevated him above the thousands of other rock vocalists? How did a small-town boy from Portsmouth come to shake the foundations of global rock? This is the story of Ronnie James Dio, a legend who did not fade, but rose. Before the arenas, before the anthems, before the world knew his name, he was Ronald James Padavona, just an ordinary boy born on July 10, 1942, in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to a hard-working Italian-American family. Raised with strict values and a relentless work ethic, young Ronald's life was shaped by discipline, not dreams. His first instrument wasn't a guitar, it was the trumpet, chosen by his family as a path to security. He excelled, mastering it with precision. But it was his voice, undiscovered, yet destined, that would ultimately set him apart. While attending Cortland High School in New York, his heart leaned away from academics and toward music. As rock and roll surged through the 1950s, so did his ambitions. Starting with early bands like the Vegas Kings, Ronnie and the Rumblers, and Ronnie and the Redcaps, the young Padavona began transforming, eventually becoming Ronnie James Dio. Though he enrolled in college to study pharmacy, he soon realized no textbook could suppress the call of rock. He dropped out, defying expectations to chase the only thing that made him feel alive, music. But his path wasn't lined with instant success. It was a long, grinding road paved with failures, reinventions, and quiet triumphs. In the early 1960s, Dio's band evolved into the Electric Elves, eventually shortened to ELF, as they shifted from early rock to blues-infused hard rock. What made Dio stand out wasn't just his vocal power, but the mythical, cinematic quality of his delivery. He didn't just sing, he told stories. Opening for Deep Purple on tour proved pivotal. On stage before thousands, Dio transformed from a local talent to a commanding presence. And it was here that fate intervened. Deep Purple guitarist Ritchie Blackmore was struck by Dio's voice, recognizing not just talent, but something mystical, ancient, and powerful. Blackmore soon left Deep Purple and, craving full creative control, formed a new band, Rainbow, with Dio as the voice that would bring his visions to life. Rainbow's debut in 1975 introduced Dio as the singer who could summon storms and legends with his voice. Songs like Man on the Silver Mountain and The Temple of the King revealed a new kind of rock, mythical, magical, steeped in lore. But the real breakthrough came with 1970's Exodus Rising, a masterpiece that featured tracks like Stargazer, where Dio's voice became the narrator of epic fantasy sagas. It was an era-defining moment. Yet, as Rainbow grew in fame, so did tensions. Blackmore craved radio-friendly hits, Dio clung to storytelling and mysticism. After the release of Long Live Rock and Roll in 1978, the creative friction could no longer be contained. Dio walked away, leaving behind one iconic chapter only to step into another. Black Sabbath was calling, and Dio was about to play the biggest role of his life. When Ronnie James Dio left Rainbow, many thought it was a step backward. He had walked away from a platform shaped by the legendary Ritchie Blackmore. But fate had bigger plans. As the door to Rainbow closed, an even greater one opened, Black Sabbath. By the late 1970s, Black Sabbath, once pioneers of heavy metal with albums like Paranoid and Master of Reality, was collapsing under internal conflict, drug abuse, and fading creative energy. Ozzy Osbourne, the original voice of Sabbath, was no longer reliable. Recording sessions became chaotic, live shows sloppy, and the band was on the brink of ruin. In 1979, they made a decision that shocked the rock world. They fired Ozzy. But the real challenge wasn't letting go of their iconic frontman, it was finding someone worthy to step in. That's when guitarist Tony Iommi turned to Dio. The two first met through mutual friends, including Sharon Arden, daughter of the band's manager Don Arden and future wife of Ozzy himself. They jammed together in a studio, and the moment Dio sang, all doubts vanished. His voice wasn't like Ozzy's, chaotic and wild, it was sharp, commanding, and thunderous. It wasn't just different, it was stronger. With Dio on board, Sabbath didn't just want to survive, they wanted to rise again. And they did. In 1980, Heaven and Hell was released. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a rebirth. From the very first track, Neon Nights, listeners knew this was a new era. Dio brought a sense of grandeur, myth, and purpose to the band. The title track became a metal anthem, shifting Sabbath's sound from doom and despair to epic battles between good and evil, just the kind of storytelling Dio was born for. His voice turned every song into a prophecy, and with it, he led Sabbath to a new peak. Heaven and Hell outsold any Sabbath album since 1975's Sabotage, restoring the band's godlike status and cementing Dio as a heavy metal legend. But light casts shadows. The band followed up with Mob Rules in 1981, another powerful record, but behind the scenes, tensions grew. Dio was now not just a new singer, he was a star. That didn't sit well with Iommi and bassist Geezer Butler, who had steered the band for years. Tensions peaked during the mixing of the live album Live Evil, where Dio was accused of altering his vocals in the studio to stand out more, something he always denied. Regardless, the trust was broken. In 1982, Dio left Black Sabbath, taking drummer Vinny Appice with him. Sabbath fell into creative chaos, cycling through vocalists, including Deep Purple's Ian Gillan, but they never truly recovered. Meanwhile, Dio was about to forge his own empire. In 1982, Dio formed his own band, aptly named Dio. He recruited Vinny Appice on drums, Rainbow alumnus Jimmy Bain on bass, and a young, ferocious Irish guitarist, Vivian Campbell. The chemistry was instant, and the band quickly entered the studio. On May 25, 1983, Holy Diver was unleashed. It was more than an album, it was a declaration. From the opening track, Stand Up and Shout, it was clear, this wasn't the doom-heavy Sabbath sound. It was urgent, triumphant, and battle-ready. Then came the title track, Holy Diver, with Vivian's searing riffs and Dio's iconic vocals transforming it into a mythic anthem. Every song on the album reflected a different piece of Dio's soul: Don't Talk to Strangers, Invisible, Rainbow in the Dark, each one a story, a statement, a warning. Holy Diver became a platinum success and instantly placed Dio among the greats. He hadn't just stepped out of Ozzy's shadow, he had built his own throne. In 1984, The Last in Line followed, matching Holy Diver in both power and popularity. Tracks like We Rock and Mystery further established Dio as a force of nature. But even at his peak, cracks began to show. Tensions grew between Dio and Vivian Campbell, who felt sidelined as Dio tightened control over the band. Financial disagreements turned into resentment. By 1986, Campbell left, and though Craig Goldie stepped in and brought fresh energy, the departure of Vivian left a scar. Subsequent albums like Sacred Heart, 1985, and Dream Evil, 1987, were still strong, but the early fire had dimmed slightly. Meanwhile, metal itself was changing. The mid to late 80s saw the rise of thrash metal, with bands like Metallica and Megadeth dominating the scene. Dio was no longer the central voice of metal, but he never gave up. Then came an unexpected twist, a chance to reunite with Black Sabbath. It was an opportunity to rewrite the unfinished story. Offstage, Dio was a different man. Despite his commanding stage presence, he led a quiet, principled life. He wasn't the drug-fueled, scandal-ridden stereotype of a rock star. He valued loyalty, family, and integrity. His first marriage to Loretta Berardi in the 1960s gave him a son, but as his career exploded, the relationship faded, and they divorced in 1972. Later, he met Wendy Walters, the woman who would become his wife and his most vital partner in music. Wendy wasn't just his spouse, she was his manager, protector, and strategist. They married in 1978, and together they built the Dio brand into a heavy metal powerhouse. Wendy handled the business, the finances, the schedules, allowing Dio to focus on what he loved most, creating timeless music. Though many feared that mixing love and business could cause cracks in their relationship, Ronnie James Dio and his wife Wendy proved them wrong. They remained inseparable until his final days, not just as husband and wife, but as a devoted team. Unlike many rock stars of his generation, Dio never indulged in a life of excess. He didn't chase luxury cars, massive mansions, or wild parties. Instead, he embraced a simple, grounded life. He cherished quiet moments, spending his free time reading science fiction and mythology, caring for his beloved cats, and enjoying the comfort of home. His deep love for animals, especially cats, was often mentioned in interviews. If he wasn't touring or recording, he could easily lose himself in a day of books, games, and feline company. His passion for fantasy and sci-fi cinema also shaped his music, with lyrics that felt like pages from epic tales or scenes from mythological films. But even warriors face battles they cannot win. After decades of shaping the sound of heavy metal, Dio's final battle came not with a guitar, but with his own body. In 2006, he reunited with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Vinny Appice to form Heaven and Hell, a new incarnation of Black Sabbath, deliberately renamed to mark a new chapter without Ozzy Osbourne. They released The Devil You Know in 2009, a dark and powerful return to form that proved Dio's voice, even at age 66, could still shake the heavens. Plans for a world tour followed, but in mid-2009, while writing this resurgence, Dio began to experience persistent stomach pain. Initially brushing it off as normal fatigue from years of touring, he eventually sought medical attention at Wendy's urging. The diagnosis was devastating: late-stage stomach cancer. The prognosis was grim. True to his nature, Dio didn't surrender. He began chemotherapy at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas, facing each round of treatment with the spirit of a warrior. Wendy stood by him as his strength and guardian, while close friends like Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler offered constant support. But despite the love, prayers, and unshakable resolve, his condition worsened. By early 2010, Dio's energy faded, and Heaven and Hell's tour was cancelled, something he had never wanted but could no longer avoid. In his final days, Dio continued writing music, spent time with loved ones, and reflected on a life lived with purpose. On May 16, 2010, Ronnie James Dio passed away peacefully at his home in Los Angeles at the age of 67. The world of heavy metal was plunged into mourning. Tony Iommi called him more than a friend, a brother. Even Ozzy Osbourne, the very man Dio had once replaced, paid tribute, saying, "Dio had a voice like no other. I always respected him." On May 30, 2010, thousands gathered for his funeral, including fans, musicians, and industry legends. The skies above Los Angeles were filled with devil horns raised high in reverence as his immortal songs echoed one last time. Yet Dio's death was not the end, only the beginning of his eternal legacy. Wendy Dio launched the Ronnie James Dio Stand Up and Shout Cancer Fund, raising millions for cancer research and awareness. His friends organized festivals, tribute concerts, and the Dio Disciples tour to ensure that his music and message lived on. Songs like Holy Diver, Rainbow in the Dark, and Heaven and Hell continue to resonate across generations. To fans, Dio was never just a singer. He was a storyteller, a warrior, a legend whose voice could never be silenced. From a young boy playing trumpet in Cortland, New York, to one of the most iconic voices in metal history, Ronnie James Dio always stood his ground. He resurrected Rainbow, redefined Black Sabbath, and built an empire with his own name. His songs are more than music. They are myth, a soundtrack for rebellion, strength, and self-belief. And though his body may have faded, every time devil horns rise at a concert, and every time the melody of Holy Diver or The Last in Line plays, Ronnie James Dio returns, immortal, eternal, and stronger than ever. What about you? Which Dio song left the deepest mark on your memory? What moment made you feel the true power of his voice? Share your story in the comments, and let's keep Dio's spirit alive together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us as we continue to explore the legends who made rock music timeless.